that we spoke about last time. So just run through that workflow of how to set up a Kademi repository using source control and versioning. I'm thinking that might take like 5 to 10 minutes, and then we can jump into other questions after that. Does everyone sound okay with that? Cool, awesome.
Sounds great.
I'll throw a screen share on, and I'm going to go for that one. There we go. All right, so this is going to be my topic for the example for today. I've got this little game here that me and my teenager made. It's called Grapples. Okay, I've just crashed into a planet. Okay, so it's, there are some gameplay problems with it, but you get the idea. All right, so this is the account where Grapples lives, and as you can see, there's a bunch of files. It's almost all JavaScript. So what I'm going to do is just run through the process of just confirm. Is everyone seeing my screen?
Yes.
Great, awesome, thank you. That would be embarrassing if that wasn't it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just show. So now they can see my screen. Okay, weird. Right, so what I'm going to do is just run through the process of checking this out with ksync, editing it, and then I'm going to create a repository in GitHub and add it there. Okay. So now I'm using Linux. I know you guys are using Windows or Mac, but everything I'm going to show you, it's super similar. It's almost identical across all environments. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I'm on the website manager, and also this applies to website files, but it's almost an identical process for apps if you're putting your code in apps. Right. So I've just clicked on the dev tools. I'm going to hit ksync. Now, the first thing you'll need to do is, if you haven't used this before, is to choose your operating system. So I'm on Mac Linux. You get slightly different instructions depending on which one you're using. It gives you the different commands. The first thing to do, if you haven't already, is to download the ksync installer. So what this does is it connects up the ksync into your browser, so you can just click buttons and have it launch. So just those 3 steps there. If for any reason you can't do that, then there's a manual method down there. So you just copy and paste the commands. It should be super simple. Once that's installed, you should be able to just, it's just something like ksync. Anyway, so right, so the first thing for me is to check out this repository. Now, if you're all connected up, if you've done that installation process, you should literally just, it's one click, you just click this button and it'll launch ksync and check out. That actually doesn't work on mine. It's a problem with Linux at the moment. So I'm going to do this way. So it's given me these 4 commands to run. The easiest thing is just click the copy button over here, and then I'm just going to paste. And that is now checking out. Now this assumes it's going to put it into, assumes you want it in this particular folder, which is the name of the website, under your home directory. Obviously you can, edit those commands if you want to put it in a different location. There we go. So that's checked out. Now it can be a fairly slow process if you've got a lot of files in there. It can be a couple of minutes, but it's, you only got to do that once. All right. So what I'm going to do now is run the sync command. Actually, what I'll do is, just before I do that, I'm just going to show you that it is actually there. So this is my editor, by the way, NetBeans. Obviously you can use any editor you want. This is, I think, a little bit old school. So I'm going to run sync. Right, so that's running now, and so I can go into my editor, and let's say I'm going to edit this one. Just let's say I want to change my thrust to 6,000. And you can just see a few logs appeared there. It says it's seen that the file was changed and it's uploaded it immediately. So now if I go into, have a look at my files, it's game.js, and there you go. So you can see it's got my change. right, so I'm just going to take a pause for a moment. Is everyone okay so far? Anything you want to cover off? No, all good.
No.
Excellent. Great stuff. Alrighty, so I'll just put that back again. Right. Okay, so that is, if you're doing real development in a project, this is how we expect to be done. You know, we're not really expecting developers to edit in their browser. Having said that, well, sometimes you do need to edit in a browser. It's sometimes the quickest and easiest thing. So just note what happens here. If I do edit this file, let's say I want it to be 900. Okay, so I've edited that. That has changed on the Kademi server. Right now, watch what happens if I now try and make some edit from here. Right. Says this repository has changed, please pull. Right. So ksync hasn't done anything because it's telling me that stuff has been changed on the server that it doesn't have locally, so it can't sync. So all I've got to do is I'm just going to pause ksync and sorry, I think I dropped out for a little while there. Has everyone still got me now? Okay.
I can hear you now.
You're back.
Great, thanks. Okay, not sure what happened then. I got a feeling someone might be restarting the QA server right now. Let me just see. This is why you should never work on the QA server, by the way. Yeah. And okay. Okay, all right, looks like we're back up now. I just put a quick message on a Slack asking the guys to not restart QA. Right, cool. Okay, so where was I? Right, dev tools, async. Okay. Right, so you can see the syntax there for running ksync. So I'm going to run the pull command.
You need to share your screen again, Brad.
Thanks, Matt. All right. Okay, so I'm going to, all right, can everyone see that? All right, so what I'm just trying to show is how to resolve conflicts in ksync. So hopefully we saw before that there was ksync wouldn't push because the files were changed. Did we see that?
Yeah, but then you paused it.
Yep, cool. Okay, so
quite catch how you paused it.
Oh, okay. So all right, well, let's just run ksync again. Cool. All right, so I'm just going to, okay, so I'm running ksync. So I've gone and made some changes here directly on the web server, right? And so now when I'm trying to use ksync, right, it's not going to work, right? It says repository has changed, please pull. Okay, so to pause it, I'm just going to press Control-C, right? It's just a command. So to resolve that, I need to pull. right? And it's just, see that syntax there. So all this stuff and then command pull. And what that's going to do, it's just going to update my local copy with the latest files from the web server. Now, see this nasty little message here, right? So all this is saying is that this file here, it's been changed on the server and it's also been changed locally, right? So ksync can't resolve that. It's either going to have to use the local copy or the remote copy. And it's got this thing here, you can tell it to remember your choice for some number of seconds. The reason for that is sometimes there may be a lot of files that are conflicting, right? And this typically happens if someone has reformatted all your files or something, right? And you don't want to have to click this button for each file if there's like 100 of them. So you just say, remember it for 60 seconds or something. But so I'm just going to tell, I know it's only one file it's changed. So I'll just tell it to use remote. Okay. So that has now made, so see this is what's on the server and this is now what's local. So they're identical again. So now I can start syncing again. I really need to just copy and paste that command. All right, so it's done its initial scan. So now I can, and there we go. So now I'm working again. Right, so, and this is pretty common because remember in Kademi, there are some things that you do need to do on the web server, right? So for example, if you're using keditor, right, you can't run keditor locally. So if you're dragging and dropping some components and things, that's definitely going to be done on the server, right? And then if you do that, then you just hop in locally, just do ksync pull, and then away you go again. All right, so all good so far, guys? Anything we want to go into in a little more detail there or anything?
So as long as you're you pull down the most recent one, and then every time you save in your editor, it'll show some commands to show that you've saved it there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Do you have to be? So you have to be running it if you're editing in your editor, basically.
Well, I mean, if you want to see the changes in the server, yes. But if it's not running, and you make a bunch of changes, that's fine. It's just when you run sync next time, it does that initial scan. It'll see some files are changed and it uploads them. Right. So it doesn't have to be running to edit, but it's just usually the way you go is usually you're editing in your IDE, and then usually you want to see the change, so then you're going to refresh your browser and you want to see the change. So that's what ksync is for. So you can see those changes, edit, hop over to here, refresh, check that's what you want, realize you've made a bug, go back here, fix it, save, go back here and try it again. Does that answer that question, Brendan?
Yep.
Cool. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this stuff into GitHub. So I've been a lazy developer. I haven't put graphles into source code previously. So now's as good a time as any. So with GitHub, there's kind of two general workflows. One is that you create a repository, you clone it locally, and then you start working. Right. The other approach is you have some source code locally already that you then want to get into a new repository. And it's two really different workflows. Right. So the first one is the easier, but usually we start building something first. And then later on go, okay, oh yeah, that's right, I need to get this into source code. So that's what I'm going to do here. All right, so I'm creating a repository called grapples. I create that. All right, and it's given me a heap of commands here. Okay, so Now, there's also this guide on GitHub. So I'm using this this approach here, which I'll just put off the side of the screen. Right, so I've created a new repository. I've opened the terminal. I've changed into it in the directory. And then I'm going to do, there's this long and messy looking git command, which none of this makes any sense to me, by the way. I'm just doing what they tell me. Cool. And now I'm going to do git add. That appears to have worked. Git commits. That's looking good too. Now I need to get the, that's it, the git URL. And then I do git remote add origin and the URL. Seems to have worked. And now I push. Now we find out if it actually has worked or not, and it has. Yay, great. Okay, so now if I refresh here, there we go. So there's all my code. Now, one thing you can see I've done wrong though is this directory here, .ksync, that's a temporary directory that should not be in source code. Actually, this one here as well, .mil. So what I should have done is use git ignore before I've pushed, but that's okay. I could delete them and then git ignore them, etc. But yeah, I won't worry about that now. But if you do leave them in there, that's going to make a mess of all sorts of things, because like ksync is keeping track of your personal ksync status. If someone else is pushing to the same repository, it's going to get super confused and everything's going to not work. So anyway, so just remember to do that. Make sure you do git ignore on those before you push them. Right. Okay, I'll just take a pause there. Anyone, any questions on that process?
Sorry for stepping in.
Sure.
This process is focused on websites, right?
Yes. But it is the same process for an app. Yeah, so for apps, it's exactly the same. You, I'll just open one up. It's a good example here. K toolbar, for example. It's the so this is a Kademi APA course, but it's the same as if it was one of yours. So you go to the Dev Tools page, and it's the same again. You can run the same commands, check out and sync.
Okay. This applies also for journeys. I think journeys can.
It does, yeah. You do just need to be a little bit cautious with journeys. So a journey, so a website, app, and journeys are all repositories. So they all have the same thing. Just yeah, with yeah, so with journeys, obviously it's JSON data. So it doesn't merge. Well, it's most of JSON. You can have HTML and stuff in there as well. But yeah, it's just yep. That'll work. Yep. Yeah, it's good. It's a good idea to version control your journeys as well. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Cool. Okay, so great. Okay, so what I wanted to do next is talk about how to handle multiple developers when you're doing team development. So remember I showed before that if a file is changed on the server and not locally, then ksync says repository changed, please pull. And you would not want to have, if you and another developer are working in the same repository, you're going to get that every time the other guy edits a file. Right? It's going to be super annoying. And it means then your changes that you're going to push to Git are going to have their changes in it, because every time you do a ksync pull, your code is going to have their changes in it. It's just a nightmare. So all you do is, let's say, I'm just going to hide some of these. well, that one's a really good one. I keep that one. Right. So let's say I'm working with someone and they're working on V5. So I'm just going to make V5 Brad. Right. And so I'm going to ksync to my version. All right. Now, something people developers often get confused about is because, so GitHub has branches and Kademi has, well, these look like branches. And people think, oh, well, they're the same thing, right? So if I have a branch over here called main, I'm going to have a branch over here called main, right? But no, that's not it at all. They're completely different and unrelated things. Normally, the area that we work in, you're normally just going to push to main. You just have that one branch in Git, unless you particularly need branch development. But assume you just have that. And then on the Kademi side, if you're working in a team, you will normally just have a version for each person in the team. And that's just so that you can work, you get your own copy, your code isn't being changed when someone else edits something, right? So you're all working together. Right now, obviously that means, let's say you got 3 different people in a team and they're all working. You're going to have 3 different sets of code in each of your versions. And the question is, well, how does it get merged? And the answer is, well, it gets merged when you push to Git. All right. So that when you push to Git, Git tells you, oh, hey, this file has changed. Do you want to merge? And if there's conflicts, it's got a great conflict resolver feature. So that is where you merge code. Okay. Any questions on that? I know that's sort of an area that often trips people up.
Is there a command to roll back a merge?
Well, you mean in Git or
would
Kademi?
You still keep the 3 in Git? Like if you merge 3 people together, will you still have those 3 branches, or can you roll back the merge, or what happens if you later decide that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Git is, it's got all of that version management stuff. I mean, if I just do a couple of commits here, just so you can see what I mean. So I'm just going to commit. I think my IDE is not quite realized that things have changed. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm in, yep, and I'll make some files here, changes here as well. I'll commit that. All right, and then I'm going to push them all. All right, so now jumping over to Git, right, you can see there's now 3 commits in this repository. Right, and then see who, okay, so I've kept a Kademi issue in the commit message, so you can ignore that. So yeah, if I want to go back and look at that very first commit, then I can do that. So I can see what was changed there, have a look at this one,
okay,
etc.
That makes sense in Git. How is it different in Kademi?
So it's important to understand the difference between what Git does and what Kademi does. So in Kademi, we do have versions, right? So that's these things. And within a version, you have your history. So I'm going to switch back to V5 because that's where I've actually been editing. So you're seeing all these different, so every edit here is a commit in Kademi. So I can go right back to this one. And I've got a full repository as it was at that time, okay? And I can even revert to that. So if I've made a horrible mistake and all of today's changes are wrong, I can roll back in Kademi to whatever it was at any point in the past. So I can do that, but it's just really important to understand this is not source control, okay? GitHub is source control. What Kademi is giving you is it's like editing safety, right? In Kademi, it's cloud development. If you imagine we didn't have source control, and I wasn't using ksync, right? So this was the only copy of my content I had. If I deleted a directory, then it would be gone forever, and there would be no way to recover from that, right? So which would mean effectively you just couldn't do it. You just could not edit like that because it's just too dangerous, right? So that's what Kademi's history gives you, is just editing safety, not real source control. What Git gives you is actual real source control, right? This is where it does have the features to merge from different developers. You can branch, you can fork, you can do all these, and then bring branches back together and all of that great stuff, right? So if let's say you've got 3 developers and well, 2 developers, and let's say one's done heaps of good work, and the second one had a merge conflict, and they've resolved it by undoing all of the other developers' work, right? So and this happens every now and then. Not a problem. You just go back and you just restore that previous commit, and then you get the developer with the new changes to merge properly into that commit, right? So when you're doing it this way, there is no situation ever where code can be lost, which is really, really good, really important. Okay, does that answer that question?
Yep. Thanks.
Cool. All right, so I just want to sort of loop back to the start, just sort of give it, because that kind of takes me to the end of what I wanted to cover here. But just wanted to sort of loop around again and just go, just to make sure that workflow is really clear. So if you're working on a website, jump over to DevTools, hit ksync, do the installation, right? Download the installer, run the checkout, and then run sync while you're at, so you can edit. And then when you're ready to put your code into source control, so you create a new repository here, you go and follow all of these complex commands, which I don't completely understand, but it doesn't matter. And then to do team-based development, use a Kademi version for each developer. Okay, so you'd have a Brandon, and Alfonso, right? You would each have your own version that you work in Kademi. Cool. Okay. Cool. Any more questions, or should we move on to the next thing?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
We usually update the Kademi applications. This also applied to the ksync command.
Yeah. That's a great question, actually. I did mean to cover this earlier. So yeah, you're right. So that's one of the most important things to manage is the versions, right? So this is actually super old. I haven't applied updates in this website for ages. But yeah, so you can see I'm using K toolbar 125, etc. Now, all of those versions, they are stored as files within the repository. So they're stored in settings.xml. So they're all in here. So what that means is they're getting ksynced, right? So if I go into here, settings, right, there they are, right? There's all those versions, right? So if we look at K toolbar, right there it is, there's 125, right? So if I update versions here, so if I hit the update all button, then that settings XML is going to change, right? So, and which is good, right? That's what you want, right? You want those versions to be source controlled. Yeah, so they'll all go through the same process. Now, but yeah, I'll just highlight though that versions at the account level are not source controlled, right? This stuff here, there is no file that has these versions at the account level in it. So you only have versioning within websites. that's fine. That's not a, usually you don't really care too much about the versions at the account level. It's the versioning within the website that matters, because that's where you're often overriding certain files, and those files might not be compatible. Those changes might not be compatible with a different version of an app. So, you've really got to control it there at the account level, because you're not doing that. You're not overriding components or anything. So it doesn't really matter. Right. So, so is that okay, Alfonso? Does that answer that question?
My question was about, do I need to update ksync jar frequently?
Oh, sorry. Okay, misunderstood. All right. It doesn't change very often. I think it probably hasn't changed in a few months at least. So I think if there was a change that was important, we'll just send out an email so you guys would know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and it doesn't auto update or anything like that. So yeah, cool. All right. So if everyone's okay, I'll move along. I'm going to close a bunch of windows. And actually what I'm going to do is I just want to show you, before we open up the questions, a couple of new features. So I'm just going to apply account level updates. Yeah, so two features that we discussed a couple of weeks ago when I was over there with you guys is one Alex Matley asked about, and that's the ability to move an account from one parent account to another. Right, so that is done now. We just go to account settings, edit. Now, by the way, we'll probably change the sort of the menu structure here, and this isn't really an account settings page. We've just repurposed the organization details page. So we might change this slightly, but yeah. But anyway, so you've got this button here, move to new parent. Super simple. You just type in the what we call the admin domain for the new parent account, right? So if you wanted to move it, if you had, for example, Marit's pre-sales master account and then Marit's development account, so you just type in, dev and press move, right? If that's the name of the other account. All right, so that's super simple. The other change where so is the set remote hash function. So Alfonso, I know you had a bit of trouble with that a couple of weeks ago. Did that all get resolved in the end?
Yes. That was resolved.
Great.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Okay. So right. So for anyone who's not aware of it, this is a tool which makes a website an exact copy of another website. Right, and it just works by taking this hash. That's a digital fingerprint which identifies all of the content within a website or an app or journey for that matter, any repository. And if you just copy and paste that hash into another repository, it makes them identical, like literally exactly the same. If you're just doing this within the one server, that's really easy. You just click set hash and you type the, copy and paste the hash in. But when you're going from one environment to another, it's a little bit trickier, because when you do that set hash, the server has to be able to get all of the content that goes with it. So if that's on another physical server, it has to be able to log into that server and get access to that content. So that's why we have this button, set remote hash. All right, and that has been updated so that to use interactive login. Now, just so the first thing it's telling me is because this is potentially a security issue, right? It's establishing a connection between two different accounts. So we're just tightening the security up around that. And at the moment, you just need to put in a where is it? It's there, isn't it? Oh, the guys are actually tidying up this UI. Oh, there it is down here. Yeah, here we go. So So you just need to generate a random key, right, and save it, right? And then you need to put that key in the other server that you're going to copy from, right? And the guys are going to give you a guide on how to do this, but it's basically you just add it down there and the URL. And once you've done that, you can then yeah, that didn't look right.
So for that key, is there a timetable for that key?
A timetable? What do you mean by
So
that? Sorry?
is it valid for 15 minutes, an hour?
Oh, right.
Or...
So no. So that's so once that key is there, you still need to log in, right?
Okay.
So it's an interactive login, right? So the key is just to verify that. So there's the two accounts that they don't actually trust each other. So what we're concerned about here is the possibility for a phishing attack, right? That that an attacker might give you a link that looks like it's a legitimate link to log into, but you've actually gone to some malicious server, right? So that's why we're having these keys on to guard against that type of attack.
Okay.
So so yeah, it looks like that is not working here at the moment. But yeah, so there is a, so the release that just went out 2 days ago, it has the first version of that where it has the interactive login, but it doesn't have the keys. So you can use that now. But yeah, what is this? This is adding that keys is that's just in progress at the moment. So that's that second one, which yeah, I thought that was working, but not quite yet. Okay, cool. So anyway, so that but that is available now in the current release, just with that slightly less secure form, but it's still secure. You know, I mean, you still do need to log in. Uses 2FA if it's enabled on your account and all the rest of it. It's just, yeah, that hash or that key thing is just to prevent phishing attacks. Right, so now I'm going to open it up to you guys. Yeah, anything that you feel like talking about.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. Is ksync your version of GitHub or another version of GitHub, or are we actually pushing this repo to a GitHub repo? Right.
So no, ksync, yeah, and that's really important to draw that line. GitHub is source control, right? Kademi does not do source control, right? So what ksync is an editing tool, right? Because you've got these files here in your account, and you do not want to have to edit them through your browser, right? That's awful. I mean, little bits of debugging is fine, right? But really, no developer wants to work in a browser all their life. You've got an IDE, it's got great shortcut keys and much better code coloring and all the rest of it. You know, I don't know if you're a big fan of Visual Studio or something like that. You know, these are great IDEs. So you want to be able to edit the files in Kademi using your IDE, right? That's what ksync does. Because when ksync is running,
it's not like this repo isn't out on GitHub somewhere. You know how you can view other people's if they make it public?
Oh, you mean like, so you mean like when you add your code to GitHub?
Yeah.
Right. So like
were you just using this as an example, or can I actually go out to your GitHub and look at what you just did?
Well, the repository I just made for grapples, that is public, right? So yeah, where is it? Why can't I find it? There. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you can go and steal all my code there if you like. Yeah, you're welcome to do that.
I'm guessing we would make ours private though.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, that's right. Yep. And that's just a yeah, just an option there when you create the repository. Yeah.
Yeah, Brad,
Do
we
you
would
ever-
just make it, I
Sorry.
mean, Brendan, we would just make it we use Bitbucket. So it works just like GitHub, but it's a completely private instance. So you don't have to worry about that. As long as you're on the
Gotcha.
merits Bitbucket, it's going to be just merits.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you. One last question. For side projects or whatever, do you use, if you make it public, do you use an open source license?
You should do. I think one of the nice things about GitHub is it does, I think, help, like when you set up a repository, it lets you choose a license, I think, an open source license, so you can do. I haven't put any license on Graphels. I actually have a secret plan to become a game developer one day, and this is going to make me rich. So, you know.
I was just curious. I know sometimes I'll throw like the MIT license on it or something, but I wasn't sure what other people did.
Yeah. You definitely should. You know, I actually, in a previous life, I did have an open source project. Then that one day became not open source and had a license fee on it. And yeah, it was really important to that everyone who had contributed to that project knew the terms of the license that they were contributing under, and everyone who was using the project knew that the terms of the license they were using it under as well. So it's one of those things, yeah, where it doesn't matter until it does. So it's definitely a good practice to get into. Cool. All right. Have we any other questions now? It doesn't have to be strictly coding related. It can be anything. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
It's related to the repositories and users roles. I did a website, and I downloaded it with ksync, no problem. Everything works fine. But when I try to do the same with Journey repository, I couldn't download the files. I was thinking maybe it's permissions roles for the user that I create.
So sorry, there was an error, was there, synchronizing the journey?
Yes, I have the error. Maybe I can.
Well, let me just try it here.
Okay.
So I'm just going to grab one of these ones. So I'm going to check out. Let's see how it goes.
Yes, it's finished fine.
Yeah, and now I'll do a sync. Right, and I will, let's see, what's that called? Onboarding journey. All right, so the first thing is that's an awful format of JSON. So let's reformat that. Right, so that looks like it's gone okay. And what I'll do now is just make sure that the journey still loads. Yeah, that's still loading. So that looks good. So if I just, what can I do here? When added to pending, let's change that to pending. Okay, so that's completed. Yeah, so that does look like it works okay. So where did you get an error, Alfonso? Was it on the checkout or when you're trying to upload or synchronize?
in the checkout, I was using a newly created user.
Right. Okay.
And that user works fine with the checkout, the website.
Yep.
So I thought that maybe that new user could need some permissions or roles for journeys.
Well, I mean, it's just a repository, so there shouldn't need to be any specific permission. But generally speaking, if you've got a user that you're editing with, it's usually going to be a full, it's going to have full administrator role. So yeah, I mean, that would be the first thing to try, right? Is just give it full administrator, because that's definitely everything. And if that works, then yeah, then it is just it is some permission error. Yeah, to be able to work with journeys, you really want to have a full user permission. And just by the way, when you're doing this approach, using these auto-generated commands, they automatically generate a authentication token, so it's not storing your password locally, right? If that's what you're concerned about, it's just storing a token.
Okay, that's really cool, that token.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it stores it in a file, and then it just it'll just use that, and that gets around, because the problem obviously with command line is you can't do 2FA from a command line. Well, actually you can. Actually it does, but it's awkward. So this gets around that whole problem.
Okay, I'll try it again with the checkout on that journey. Maybe I missed some detail.
Yeah, have a go, and obviously if there's still a problem, just put a support request in. It would be good in that situation to include whatever logs are coming out of ksync.
Okay.
Just not the whole lot, but just where you see the error, and that'll usually help us identify what the cause of the problem is.
Okay, thank you so much.
No worries. Right. Yeah, anyone else? Is everyone happy or familiar with the new debugging tool? One that's my favorite new tool. If want a quick demonstration of that, or
Yeah, please.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So just trying to think where would be the best place to show this off. I really want like a dashboard or something. Yeah, maybe one of these ones. Okay, that's got a awful domain name on it. Yeah, no. Okay, this may not be the best choice to. Oh, there we go. Okay, now that's all right. Cool. Okay. All right. So, what's got a bit of stuff on it? A bit of stuff there. Okay. So, all right. Well, let's say this dashboard was running slow or was having some errors or something. So we want to debug it. So we're going to jump over to DevTools for the website. I'm going to start a debug session, and see it's enabled capture web requests, and it's put a host name in, and it's put a path prefix. So it's going to capture. So that means it's going to capture requests from every page in the site, right? Everything that starts with a slash. I'm going to run it for 5 minutes. So start that. So now if I load that, you can see here it is captured there's two page requests, right? So one to the dashboard and one to load translations, right? And if I have a click around, right, you can see it's capturing all of those requests, right? So let's say I don't care about those ones. I'm going to hit clear, and I'm going to go back to the dashboard. All right. So from here you can see. So it was a GET request, to that URL, it gave me a 200 HTTP status, and it took 125 milliseconds. So if I go and click into that, I can now get some really detailed information about that request. So the first thing I'm seeing here is a performance summary, right? Total duration 125, 112 milliseconds in templating, 23 milliseconds executing SQL requests, 1 millisecond hitting Elasticsearch. So that all looks pretty good. Typically, if you see a high proportion on SQL or Elasticsearch, that usually suggests a problem. And 125 milliseconds, that's always going to be good rendering time. If anytime you're seeing your rendering go over, or if it's over 500 milliseconds, then that's worth looking at. If it's over like 1,000, 2,000 milliseconds, then there's definitely a problem. It's capturing all your request headers, I think it's not showing the user because I'm a super user. Like if it was and that's sort of inaccessible. If it was a real user, you would see that there. Right, so logs is really important. I don't know why we're getting so much logging about font items right now. That's someone's gone a little bit overboard with their logging, I think. But yeah, you can see there's some things going on down here with product search, right? Probably because it's one of these components is probably looking for products. Oh yeah, there you go. See, sorry, couldn't find any products for you. Again, that's probably because I'm logged in as a super user. So if you wanted to, so firstly, is if you're seeing an error occurring, this is always a good place to go, right? To begin with, try to figure out what's going on. You might just see a dirty big error. Like so you can see this I, that means these are all informational logs. You can also see warnings or errors. The next one is authorization. And this is really important, like, because often one of the hardest types of problems to solve is authorization, either when someone is getting access to something they shouldn't have, or someone is not getting access to something they should. It's sometimes difficult to sort of unpick exactly why. So what this is doing is this is giving you a narrative. So you can see that that the resource type being accessed is public, right? So that automatically means there is read access given. And then it's going to go through all of the roles that the user has been given. In the way, and this might just take a little explanation of how Kademi roles work. So in Kademi, we have this concept of a role such as redeemer or administrator or content viewer. So each role applies to a certain type of resource, right? So the redeemer role, that only applies to resources that can do redemption, right? Content viewer only applies to content resources, etc. So when we're evaluating whether someone has permission to access something or not, we look at all the roles. The first question is, does a role apply to the resource that they're using? And you can see here, there's a whole bunch of roles which are actually not being found because those apps are not installed. Administrator, being a very powerful role, applies to everything. It applies to all resources automatically. When a role does apply, it then contributes some privileges. Right? Privileges can be things like read, write, change properties, change permissions, change ownership, things like that. So there's a specific, well, there you go. You can see them all there, right? So because the administrator just has this one permission or one privilege, which is all, right, which encapsulates everything. So you can see then the end here, the expanded list of privileges which this user has on this resource is those. And then the final step is that for any given operation, the operation will require some privilege, right? So because I'm trying to view a dashboard page, the privilege it needs is read content, right? So the comparison here is it says, well, okay, does the list of roles the user has, does that contain the privilege they need, right? And that's so the allowed is true. If I'm updating something, then I'll usually need the write content privilege. If I'm updating properties, so ACL is access control list. So that's basically reading, writing permissions, etc. So, and then that's the end result down there. So that's the process you go through if you're having a problem with someone is being denied access or when they shouldn't be, etc. All right, so the next one is performance. So this is you can have a lot of fun on this tab. So this gives you a tree of all of the functions, I guess, really, that were run within Kademi as part of rendering this. So the one very at the top is IDP process, and so IDP stands for intrusion detection and prevention. So this is so Kademi's IDP framework wraps everything, so that's why it's at the top. Everything executes within the context of IDP. So then under it is just this sort of generic process function, which handles any kind of request. And then we've got get resource. That's where we're trying to locate resources. In this case, we're trying to locate dashboard. And then we've got to locate the user. The user is also a resource, which is me. Then there's an authorization process. So does this user have the ability to access that resource, which is what we saw in the authorization tab. And then we're going to fire some events, accessed event, things like that. So you can see here, almost all the time has gone into the get handler. So that's just generating the response to the get request. So you can see the authorization is like 1 millisecond, accessed event 0.03. So that's just checking to see if there are any journeys that relate. And it's obviously really quick to check to see that there's not. And then write page is 100 milliseconds there. And it does a few things there, and then there's 25 milliseconds has gone into the actual processing the templates. And then actually most of it is the evaluating dynamic components. So that's the visibility rules and expanding K codes and things like that. So if you're having a page that's running a bit slow, you can go through here to identify, oh, there we go, it's 50 milliseconds just rendering the menu, right? And so you can say, well, why is that? Now, if you're looking at something which is just Kademi's code, then, well, there's obviously not a lot that you'll want to do about it, but often this will be, you know, your own components. So, you know, if you have your own custom component and you're seeing that rendering really slowly, then you can drill into it, and it might be because it's doing, you know, it's looking up 5,000 different promotions. And you go, oh, okay, well, it shouldn't be looking at 5,000 promotions. It should just look up the promotions this user has access to, right? Usually the main reason for inefficient code is nested loops, right? So when you have a loop and inside that you're looping over something else, and obviously the number of loop iterations becomes the multiple of the outer one times the inner one. So for example, if you were looping over all of the sales records that someone had, and then for each one you were looping over each membership that the user has, which is pretty common, then the total iterations will be the number of sales records multiplied by the number of memberships the user, right? So if you had, you're looking at 100 sales records and user has 10 memberships, there's going to be 1,000 total iterations. And if each iteration takes 2 milliseconds, well, that's 2,000 milliseconds just to render that component. Right, so in that situation, you would then want to refactor it so you don't have a nested loop. So which is usually means doing an Elasticsearch query where you get everything back at once. Cool, so that's performance. So that's really handy. And then on the SQL tab, you actually get to see all of the SQL statements that are being executed. And it gives you a count. So this is, speaking of memberships, so this has been called 10 times and it was 2 milliseconds on average. And you also get to see all Elasticsearch queries that were executed. Now, Elasticsearch is a great tool. It's usually so fast that you just ignore it. But every now and then it's you give it something which it struggles with, and then it suddenly becomes an issue. Or The other common one is you're calling it so many times that even though each query is fast, but you're calling it, 10,000 times, so it ends up being slow. Right. Yeah, sorry. So I just talked for ages there. Now you can see that the 5 minutes has passed, so that debug session has stopped now. The reason you can't just leave it running forever is because it's actually a really heavy process to capture all this information. Like each request can generate like a meg of data. So yeah, that's why we need to limit how often it runs for. Just the one last thing I'll say is so we just saw using a debug session on web requests, but you can also do it on background tasks, right? So then that's going to capture all of these, all these things. All right. So debug sessions are not just for front-end requests, they're also for background processes. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Honestly, it is your best friend if you're building code, this debug session thing, and we're going to add to it. The next thing that we want to add is a listing of template variables, because often that's the hardest thing, is to know when you're building something, where do I start? What have I got access to? So we're going to put that in there. But yeah, it is a good tool. Cool.
Great.
Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, if not, there's a couple of things I can poke around, although we're pretty much at time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a quick question. So, sorry for stepping in. It's about load tests. There is an approach or tool that you suggest for load tests?
Load testing, yeah. So that's right. So load testing is really, really important. Obviously, if it's a bigger program, there are a lot of them. The one that I've used a lot is JMeter. Bill, I think you're old enough to have used JMeter. Have you come across that?
I was probably using the .NET version.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
N meter or something.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Meter.net or something. Yeah. So that's a tool that I've used a lot. It's it is Java based, but you just use it as a command line tool. And so this is good for really quite simple load testing. You can have you'll normally, when you're load testing, the first thing to remember is Kademi does a lot of caching. So if you're doing load testing and you're going to do 1,000 requests all under the same user, you're not going to see very representative response, because Kademi is going to cache that data and every request after it is going to be super fast, right? So when you're doing load testing, you really need to have a set of users that you're testing against, so that you're hitting and missing the cache in a way which represents a real load. So yeah, with JMeter, you have, this is going way back. Actually, I haven't used it for quite a while, but you can set up a file that has users to use with credentials, and then you can run a number of threads in parallel, and each thread will use a different user, and you can set it up to hit a series of different URLs. So you might have, maybe you've got 100 threads running, and you're going to have a third of them hitting the dashboard page, a third of them hitting the my account page, and a third of them hitting the profile page, or something like that. So yeah, here you go. So here's some instructions for how to use it. So that's a really good tool. But it's good in the sense that it's really simple. There are much more sophisticated tools that you can use as well.
And free.
And free, yes. I think Selenium.
Okay.
Selenium web testing. Yeah, I think this is also a free and open source tool. So this one is, this one's a lot more powerful, but it also takes, a bit more knowledge to drive it. So this is actually what Kademi's QA team is using for our internal testing.
Okay.
So my suggestion, if you're not sure where to start, probably start with JMeter, or there may be
Apache Bench. Apache
sorry?
Bench.
What is it? Sorry.
Apache Bench.
Oh
Apache?
yeah. I haven't used that one. Yeah, I'm not sure if that supports the sort of contextual testing. So that's the thing about JMeter is the thing about you can set it up with different users, and each user can, there's sort of a test plan that each thread executes. So you can even have something like go to the registration page, submit the registration form, which will create a user, and then continue testing with the newly created user. So I think just looking at that, I think this is
Very basic.
it's like a lower level tool than that. So that might be fine, but yeah, it depends on particularly what you want to test and how you want to test it. So yeah, just have a look around. There's a few different tools. Yeah, just whatever works with you, I guess. So yeah, there is of course a few different types of testing. There's load testing, functional testing. Obviously, that's what everyone thinks about when I talk about testing. And then of course there's penetration testing, so security testing. Yeah, that's where obviously it's best to have some security specialists doing that. That's what they're good at. But there's also open source tools that'll just run a smattering of tests. Yeah.
Okay. Any restrictions or I mean
So yeah, well, with the main concern is with load testing. Penetration testing, even if you find a vulnerability, and that's super rare, by the way, but even if you did, it's not really going to affect anyone else. Load testing, there is certainly the potential to disrupt other services on the same infrastructure. So what we would normally say is if you're intending to do load testing, just let us know on production, at least. Let us know so that we can just make sure there is a time when someone is available. So if it does cause some disruption, we can sort things out. Obviously, we're never expecting it to, but I mean, definitely if you've written some custom code, there's always the potential that there is some inefficiency there. So yeah, it's best to do that when there is, after telling Kademi, the support team will have someone available if needed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Cool. Oh, and Alfonso, I know that you put a request in asking about SDLC stuff. So I was actually thinking it would be good to have this session first, and then we'll reply to that with reference to some of the things we've spoken about today.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll just connect up with Alex. He's handling that after this call, and then he'll get a response in back to you, which
okay.
might and it might make sense to have a follow-up call specifically on that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. That's right. Right. So anything else, or should we wrap things up? All right. Sounds like we're going to wrap things up. Cool.
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being with me and for my first ever Ask Me Anything session. Yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed it. I'll fire an email out once we've put this up on YouTube.
All right.
Thank you very
Thanks a lot,
much.
Brad.
Cool.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Great
All right.
hour.
Okay, great. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.